Hey guys, welcome back to Eve Technologies YouTube show. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to dive into a story covering AI today, and Will, let's actually, before we dive into the story, guys, it doesn't cost anything. Give us a quick like, subscribe. Really appreciate it. It's free to do, and it would just mean the world to us. So thank you for your support.
Absolutely.
Will, let's dive into the latest news.
Let's do it. I mean, it's not strictly AI, but it's been a hot topic at the moment. And I think that it's an interesting topic to talk about as well. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. So I'll very quickly open up the article and talk to you about it. And then let's launch in and get your thoughts on it straight away. And then I'll give my thoughts and we'll do what we normally do. So
we'll have a good chinwag.
We'll have a good chinwag. Oh, by the way, Ben didn't mention, we've changed the format. We've got new software, new lighting, new setup, and we're trying to keep the videos to 10, 12 minutes, talking about one topic particularly, just so we can go in a little bit more depth. And we'll see how that does. So yeah. Today's topic is going to be about the ruling that was made only a few days ago now on Google's antitrust. So for those who don't know, and Ben, if you didn't know, Google's obviously been in a lot of legal battles for the last year or so, where the US government were making accusations about anti-competitive behavior, specifically around its search, which depending on who you talk to, that does make some sense. You know, it's a very dominant browser, Google, a very dominant search engine. Sorry, Google. They pay Apple an extraordinary amount of money to make it the default browser, the default search engine. I keep getting mixed up. The default search engine on the iPhone. But the reason I'm thinking the browser is they also control Chrome, which is the most popular browser in the world. So you're using the most popular browser in the world, owned by Google, to use the most popular search engine by Google in the world. And then they also have a massive ad network, which is by far the biggest in the world too. So you can understand sort of where this sort of antitrust ruling comes from. However, they've actually been allowed to largely go on and keep doing what they were doing without any sort of restrictions, which was a surprise for a lot of people, because we've talked on the show before, Ben, about Chrome being potentially detached from Google and being forced to sell it, as well as other rulings that would cause Google to break down its huge empire. So, but none of this has happened. In the ruling, they only have to share a certain amount of data with competitors. So they have a huge amount of data, and they're required to share it with competitors to improve their search services. They're also required to put together an oversight committee, which again will monitor the activities within Alphabet generally to make sure that it's adhering to antitrust laws. And that is largely it. Other than that, they're allowed to operate pretty much as they were. So this antitrust ruling was a little bit anticlimactic. But as we did yesterday, I think what would be interesting is to get our thoughts on antitrust in general and what we think. Do you think this was a fair lawsuit to bring to Google? What do we think about these big tech companies and the monopolies that they're creating? Maybe we could circle it back briefly to AI as well, because we've spoken, at length about democratizing AI and bringing it to the people and not having it owned by big corporations. So I think we have fairly complex views on antitrust. So, that's what I think we should talk about today.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's I have a real sort of think on things like this, because ultimately what you've got is a really successful business. The market has decided that they are the number one. It's not a case of magically they are number one. They just created a really good product. So if you go out into the marketplace, you create a really good product and everyone loves you, it feels wrong in many ways that you get them penalized for that success. Having said that, what we've got obviously is state intervention, where that the power of these tech companies, particularly Google, we're talking in this case, becomes so huge that are they looking to break potentially break up its power base for other reasons over and above just competitive reasons, antitrust and all those types of things? Or are they trying to minimize the power of these tech giants? Because ultimately most things now are driven by the tech sector in terms of economic growth, in terms of economic activity. You look at any of the indices, in the what's the one in America? I keep saying the FTSE 100, but it's not the FTSE. It's whatever it is in America. It's the whole market's driven by the big seven. Whether it's Apple, whether it's Google, or whoever. So it's the main growth is from those sort of tech companies, and there's a huge amount of power. I mean, these companies have more money than most countries, which is just mind blowing. And I think ultimately we are going to see a shift in terms of the power relationship over time, because I think the nation states, you could argue is still clamoring onto power and still clamoring onto control. We can talk about CBDCs. We can talk about the centralization of data, and governments are trying to sort of keep control of their population. But as the workforce become more tech orientated and more mobile, the state's losing control. So I think there's probably multiple elements at play here. I think at my core I struggle with businesses being hamstrung by compliance, but I understand there is that layer of the state so-called doing things to protect the people, but we as we've seen, we've got to question that. So I've got mixed feelings. I think it's in many respects it's down to the marketplace to build up competitors who can actually compete for market share rather than state intervention. So in many respects it's probably a good thing, but then we also know monopolies can be dangerous and can be bad as well. So a little bit mixed feelings. It'll also be interesting to see, what's going to happen, if anything, with that potential sale of Chrome to that AI company.
Well, that's not going through anymore. So the ruling has been
dead in the water.
Dead in the water. So Google's allowed to largely operate, without any restrictions that were talked about. They're allowed to. All they have to do is basically share competitor data, share their data with competitors and have an oversight committee, and that's pretty much the long and the short of it. I think I have mixed feelings about it as well. I think that it's always, because again, a couple of weeks ago we spoke about how Google is actually investing a lot of money in building power plants as well, in joint with energy companies in America. And it's I guess where you stand with this, depends on how comfortable you are with private corporations having that much. If you have that much money and that much power that you can actually affect the power grid and all these are very fundamental things to countries, then that should determine how bothered you are about Google. This doesn't tackle that. This is specifically about search, which I don't know if is Google's biggest monopoly, funnily enough. But I think for me it's the same, mixed feelings. I do struggle with the idea that you can build up a very successful business over the course of 25, 30 years and no one can compete with you based on the fact that you just have the superior product, and then you get shut down for that. I do also understand, the ideas of free markets and the fact I don't deny that Google hasn't done anti-competitive things to try and keep that top spot beyond just building a great product. For example, paying off Apple billions of dollars a year to make sure that they're the only browser and the only search engine that ends up on the iPhone. I mean, you can argue whether these are competitive behaviors that allow people to come through that don't have billions of dollars but a great product. Though, yeah, it's a fine line because I don't necessarily agree with state intervention either. I think it's a very fine line between over-regulating and overreaching and allowing the market to do what the market will do. I think that things like oversight committees are not necessarily a bad idea to keep people operating within ring fences. I don't think one big organization should have as much power over have a load of power. For example, one government department shouldn't have the power to decide. I think this should be distributed and spread to make sure that, again, the government doesn't, overreach and have anti-competitive behavior, because it can happen from all ends, can't it?
Absolutely, and who's not to say that government officials aren't getting backhanders to go a certain way and play a certain tune. So it's what this screams to me is the future has to be a decentralized future. Because whether you have people in government or people in corporations, you have the problem of people. Whether that's corruption, whether that's bad practices, bad behaviors, anti-competitiveness, whatever it is, you've got people involved who may be good, but they also may be bad. You may have an infrastructure that is good right now, but somebody else in 20, 30 years comes in and that's bad, and that abuses that infrastructure. So ultimately, I think the future has to be a decentralized type of future where, it's programmatically decided in terms of, based on on whatever the principles are at that time. Maybe those could be changed and adapted with a deregulated sort of governance model. Maybe that would seem to make sense. Interestingly enough, that's exactly what Cardano are doing, which is a phenomenal feat that they've achieved. So yeah, I mean, we've seen a world where we've got to have more questions and more doubt, both in terms of our political leaders, unfortunately, and also with corporations. So to me, a decentralized future seems to make a lot more sense.
No, I do agree. I think that I'm quite strongly a capitalist. Obviously we're in business, and I believe that capitalism is the best model that we have to date, and that is based a lot at the moment on centralization and building centralization. I'm not opposed, and I think that decentralization is a good thing. However, it's doing it correctly that itself doesn't end up being corrupted as well. I mean, you talk about decentralized entities, but you have to question and put in protections, and I don't have an answer how to do that necessarily. There's ideas, and sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't, but how do you keep that thing decentralized? I mean, even the fact that, so you could take like the Bitcoin network, for example. We can talk. I don't know as much about Cardano as you do, but it'd be interesting to research. But something like the Bitcoin network, for example, it is decentralized, but it's also not to a degree as well. There are massive stakeholders in Bitcoin that hold more coins than everybody else, which therefore puts weight on the network. Additionally, there's a core development team. Who are they? Who decides who goes in the core development team of things like of these tokens and these coins? And so in theory, it's a great model. Decentralize it whilst keeping the ability to capitalize and build businesses. How do you put that into practice? I think is very, very much evolving still. We're in an age where it's another. We talk a lot about AI, obviously, but cryptocurrency and blockchain is another emerging technology, and it's very much emerging. So yeah, I think it's a fascinating model, and I think things like blockchain and cryptocurrency and decentralization can go a long way towards overseeing proper democratic processes within business.
Absolutely. You know what? I think we're just at the very, very beginning of this. I wouldn't call it an experiment, but it's almost like a new path that's being explored within
a new paradigm, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like all these things, it takes time to fully implement, figure out, make mistakes, improve, refine, test, experiment. So we're very much in a very experimental space, which is obviously happening in the crypto space with decentralization. How that changes to the governance of the way nation states operate, who knows when, who knows if it'll ever happen, who knows all the rest of it. Whether it means businesses and organizations start changing their business models from, like you said, like a capitalist model where your product and your success is built off what you do and what you build and the service that you provide to the world. So I think that will still exist, but it's just how does that model evolve, if at all? Is there a hybrid model? Maybe not. Maybe there isn't a hybrid model. Maybe it's one or the other. Who knows? It's a really interesting thought experiment, and we're very much right at the beginning of this paradigm shift. So we'll look back in 50, 100 years, and we'll see, how things sort of panned out. But, it's hard to sort of predict exactly what will happen. But, going back, just circling back, final thoughts on the story, Will, for the Google and that decision.
Go for it. I think I mixed feelings about it. I think ultimately I am glad that they weren't forced to sell off Chrome and break down their business. I think that is an overreach by government. I don't think that should ever be a punishment. I think that if any time you were forced to do that, I think that's wrong. I think that the ruling is probably fair. I don't think that you as a business should be doing things that are deliberately anti-competitive and to create a market where you are the only business. I think that is not necessarily fair, especially when you have billions and billions and billions of dollars to throw around. You don't think that's fair at all. So I think I land right in the middle, where I'm glad they have an oversight committee put in, to make sure that other because again, we're a small tech company, right? I mean, we want a chance to compete, and I think that's fair to do, and have a fair chance to do that. So an oversight committee is good. I think sharing data, I mean, it's not good for Google, but as a competitor, I'll take it. but again, I think the ruling's fair. I'm glad they weren't forced to sell things off.
Awesome, brilliant. Well, let's wrap it up. Everyone who's watching still, thank you. Really appreciate it. I hope you got some value out of it. We'll be jumping back on tomorrow with.
No, we won't. It's Saturday.
Oh my God! Honestly, this week I've been all over the places. Just to share with you guys, wherever you're watching this, schools have restarted from the summer holidays. I'm out of sync completely, so you have to bear with me slightly. Getting back into routines, shall we say? So we're gonna have a weekend off, which is gonna be nice, and then back on it on Monday.
Absolutely
brilliant. All
Amazing.
Right, we'll see you then, guys. Take care.
Thanks for watching.